Hey everybody, welcome back to the IE427 garage. Today we have an old friend in the shop. We have the Silver Mk4 that we did a couple of years ago. It is here for some maintenance work and some drivability issues, and we're hoping to get those all squared away today and get this car back to the owner so he can list it for sale. Alright, normally I would have gone to probably Rock Auto, one of my favorite online stores, to buy all of the tune-up stuff for this car, but time got away from me. And seeing as how the owner is overseas right now, I didn't want to bug him with having to get this stuff ordered and get it shipped and all that stuff. So I just went ahead and I picked all this stuff up at the local O'Reilly's. So what we're going to do is we're going to change these out with just some Autolite 25s. They're the standard copper core plugs that go in a 5-liter Mustang, and since essentially that's what we're running for a powertrain in the Silver Mk4, that's what we're going to do. We're going to run some fuel injector cleaners. This just happens to be the brand that I like. You can use any brand you want. And then I got some generic 8mm spark plug wires, because you just never know. You know, the car sits unattended for 5-6 months, and you know it's not in a climate controlled environment. It is inside, but it gets hot, it gets cold, and so therefore we're just going to go ahead and change out the spark plug wires as well. We're going to check the cap, we're going to check the rotor, but if there's no signs that they have an issue, not a big deal. If we do see that there's wear issues on them, which I don't expect, we'll just go ahead and we'll grab a new cap and a rotor and we'll change those as well. But this is where we're going to start. We're going to be draining the fuel tank in the car and then adding some fresh fuel, and then we're going to go ahead and use the Berrymans to both stabilize the fuel that we're putting in, and then to also clean the fuel injection system of the car with the additive that we've bought. So all right everybody, this is the Silver Mk4 that we did a few years ago. This car, how do I describe this? This car really gave us the ability to cut our teeth on cars that hadn't previously been well built. Let's put it that way. This car was a mess when we got it. It came in because it had some issues overheating. And when we first took a look at the car for the then owner, he showed us where the radiator hose had been blowing off of the radiator. And what we found is it had a stock Mustang radiator, and there's nothing wrong with the stock Mustang radiator, but in order to make the turn up here in the front, rather than using the instructions or the assembly manual and running the tube inside the fender well and then through the outlet that Factory 5 gives you right here in the F panel and then over, whoever built the car just kinked the hose to the point where it had cut off circulation. And I can't imagine that anybody got any good use out of the car, because anytime the car would heat up, it would simply build up pressure and blow the hose off. And the whole engine compartment on this car was just a mess because coolant had just gone all over the aluminum panels. And if you've ever tried to clean coolant off aluminum panels, it's not easy. So we did a complete body off rebuild on this car, leaving only the donor engine and donor transmission. Even the rear end on this got attention. We took it apart, we inspected everything, we changed the axles, and then we did the big brake upgrade on the back. So pretty much every part of this car was touched and upgraded. The car previously had carpeting, but it was not well done. There was no heat and sound mat on it, so the car was unbearably hot in the summertime when the radiator hose wasn't blowing off. And so it's in here today for some attention. We've actually been storing this car at our off-site warehouse, and it's been there for about 6 months. And the last time I took the car out, I noticed that it was having some drivability issues. It was spitting and sputtering, and it felt like there was an ignition miss or that it wasn't getting fuel. Basically, it was going lean. So first thing we did is we drained the fuel tank. And rather than just draining the fuel tank through the filler up here, I actually took the access cover off of the fuel pump, and we pulled the fuel pump because, having had already pulled off the fuel filter, there was debris in the bottom of the tank for the fuel filter. And the fuel filter is like a canister style, so it's round, cylindrical, and it unscrews and then drops out the bottom. It's actually underneath the car, just forward of the fuel pump right here. So, haven't seen that. I pulled all that apart, pulled the fuel filter out, cleaned out the inside of the canister, changed the filter, and decided that it was going to be best to drain the fuel by pulling the pump and inspecting the sock, which is the pre-filter. And the pre-filter actually wasn't that dirty. I mean, there was some debris in it, but it wasn't dirty to the extent that the fine particulate filter, the actual fuel filter, was. And so I made the decision that somewhere it had to be being contaminated between the pump and that filter. And it's a very short run. It's only about 18 inches long. And my theory at this point is that the fuel pump, which may be the original donor fuel pump, we don't know a lot of particulars about certain parts of the car, but it was initially a donor build. Our suspicion is that the pump was just eating itself. There was a coating on the outside of the pump. This is the pump we pulled out, and you can see the coating has started to like disintegrate, like almost like, you know, being eaten away like paint. And I don't know if it's this that was in the fuel filter or whether it was something from inside the pump. And so I had a brand new pump here, Warborough 255, I think. And so I just made the decision that it was going to be best to pull this fuel pump and replace it with a new one. And so that's what we did. So the car now has a brand new fuel pump, and we're going to see how that works out. The filter that we use is a Aeromotive canister style filter with a 10 micron filter element. And I don't think any of the trash got beyond that. But I think it started to collect enough debris that it was limiting the amount of fuel getting to the front of the engine. So the next thing we're working on right now is the spark plugs. And the spark plugs actually look great. I mean, they just have a little bit of grain on the end of them. And there's no fuel fouling or oil fouling. They're really clean. Hell, I wish I could get the plugs out of my own car this nice when they come out. Mine runs a little rich, and they always tend to be a little bit fuel fouled. So I'm really happy with the way these burned. These are the extended reach spark plugs, and we replaced them this time with just the standard reach spark plugs, and we gapped them at the same. So I'm hoping the new ones have the same wear. But as you can see, I put them in order. So this is 1 through 4, this is 5 through 8. And all the plugs look really good. So the next thing we're going to do is I have the spark plug wires. Of course, I keep my manual here so I can look up the spark plug gap. We did gap these a little bit on the tight side. The range is between 54 thousandths and 44 thousandths and 54 thousandths, and we went at 44 because supposedly this computer is out of a 1989 or 1990 Mustang, and so I just went with that spec, and we'll see how that turns out. That's what we gapped the old ones at. And they've been in there for 2 years now, so they look really good, so I gapped the new ones at the same. So we've got some new plug wires that are going to go on there, and then we're going to fill it full of new fuel. And just to be on the safe side, I have some Berrymans to treat the fuel. I'm going to put 5 gallons in there with the recommended amount of this. I think it's 1 ounce of the fuel additive for every gallon of fuel, so we'll put 5 ounces of this in and 5 gallons of fluid. And we're going to run the fuel for a while and see if our issue clears up, or if it has cleared up. So we'll go from there. So the last thing to do, and I do this in 2 steps. I don't like pulling all the spark plug wires off and doing them while I'm doing the plugs. I prefer to just do all the plugs, and then I'll come back and I'll change the plug wires out one at a time. And since I'm the one that did the plug wires on this, I know they're in the right order. So we should get that wrapped up, and then we'll start putting stuff back together. We'll get the mass airflow tube back on, and we'll get the access cover in the back on. Although I might leave the access cover off until we know we don't have any leaks. And then hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to take this thing for a test drive. All right, everybody, next day. We've got fuel in the car. I just took it for a little spin around the block, and everything seems to be a-okay. So I think what it was a combination of things. I don't think it was the spark plugs or the spark plug wires, but you know what? They're inexpensive. So basically, even having to buy them from the local parts store, I think all told we spent maybe $60 and 8 spark plugs and a set of spark plug wires. So that's not bad. And we topped off all the fluids, and so now we know that it's got, you know, the right amount of coolant in it, which it did, and it has the right amount of oil in it. It was a little low. I don't know what it is, something about the nature of these 5-liter Ford motors, the push rod ones anyways. They just seem to burn about a quart of oil per oil, you know, in between each oil change. And I've had a lot of 5.0 Mustangs, and that just always seems to be the case. So it was a little low on oil, so we took care of that. And then, of course, we took it out for a little test spin around here. Really got on it, but maintained the speed limit. And it's running good. 100% better than it was. So I think by the time we get a little bit of that fuel injection system cleaner through there, it's probably going to, you know, run even better. But for just a incremental change, changing that pump out and replacing the fuel filter was all the difference in the world. We got the old fuel out of it as well. Now, I did take that fuel and I put it in one of our dailies, and the wife took it to dinner last night, and it is hesitating. So I've already put some fuel system cleaner in that one and topped off the tank in there just to dilute it. So I think we're going to be just fine. But I think the old fuel wasn't helping things, but I think essentially what happened was the fuel pump was old, and it had just started to eat itself. And that's why we were finding debris in the fuel filter, but not in the tank, because I think all that debris actually came from the actual pump itself. So it's got a brand new pump in there, and everything's working really good. So let me turn you guys around, and then we can do a quick wrap up of this. But you can hear the headers are hot. They're cooling down right now. They're doing the little snap, crackle, and pop as the heat dissipates from them. And the underside of the engine looks it looks very much like the day we finished the car. It's a little dusty. It could use a little sprucing up, but I'm going to leave that to the owner to take care of. And then in the trunk, the only one thing we have left is to put the access cover back on the fuel pump, and then that'll be it. We'll be all done. So I did put everything back in the trunk here for the owner, and we'll put that plate back on, and then we'll wrap things up. I'm probably going to be taking this back to our warehouse tomorrow morning, and I'm going to miss this car. This is a fun little car. Probably, you know, they all become like part of the family, but this is probably one of my favorites because, as I stated before, it's just a fun little car. So with that, I am going to thank you guys all for watching. A little reminder, if you like what you're seeing, do the like, the share, the subscribe, and all that good stuff. And then if you've got any questions about this car or any other of the projects that we have here in the shop, just put it down there in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. Until next time, have a great day.